could take him down in a situation is even better than Matt's. Plus, a glaring weakness that the Chiefs have to improve to get back to the Super Bowl. Mina Kimes, Damian Woody, and Dan Graziano here. We will not make anyone chug anything as far as I know, but you never know what can happen here. We're a couple minutes in now. We do have to talk about the real story of the Packers offseason, and that would be Aaron Rodgers. He was throwing footballs and playing some golf at the American Century Championship, and he was asked about his plans to return to the Packers after skipping mandatory minicamp. We're all whistling because, man, that football looks pretty. But here's what Aaron Rodgers had to say about coming back.
I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this week, and then I'm going to get back to working out and figure things out in a couple weeks.
D-Wood, he said a couple of weeks, all right? So when does it actually start to matter when he reports? Is it training camp day one?
Yeah, Laura, I think this is a situation where Aaron Rodgers is going to report day one or he's not going to report at all. You know, players play, and around this time of year, guys get the itch to play. You also got to remember, Aaron Rodgers wasn't involved in any of the offseason program, mandatory minicamp, or anything like that. So if you don't report, you're missing valuable reps within training camp, and guys like Devontae Adams and company, they still need those reps with your quarterback. So the timeline kind of lines up with what Aaron Rodgers just said. So I think Aaron Rodgers reports and is off and running in Green Bay.
Yeah, but Damian, in my limited experience with professional football players, they don't love going to training camp, right? Especially the veterans. Like maybe it might want to take a few days. And remember, during the last CBA negotiations, it was Aaron Rodgers who was pushing for a provision to be put in that you didn't have to report till August 1st at all in the offseason. That was what he was arguing for. So this isn't a guy that historically has been in a hurry to get back to Green Bay. I think he could probably get into training camp before reporting and still be ready in time for the season. I just think there's two options for him here. Either sit out games or come back and find a way to reconcile with the Packers and play for them this year. I don't think they're in a mode where they're going to trade him.
Yeah, those dates in July you just saw on your screen are the important dates. And also, not that Aaron Rodgers really cares about preseason games, but it is worth noting the Packers preseason opener August 14th against the Texans at Lambeau. So if the Packers made Rodgers available, Von Miller thinks his Broncos are one team who could make a deal for him. This is a quote. He says, if A-Rod's out there for us to get him, those are the two guys that have him the job. He's talking about his front office. John Elway, he's done a great job of working the big-time guys before. Peyton Manning, DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, all those other guys, Von Miller says. So if there's a guy to be had, GP and John Elway are two to put on it if it can be done. There's a lot of ifs in there, but either way, Mina, if he does, let's add another one. If he does go to Denver, are they a Super Bowl contender right away with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback?
No doubt. Absolutely. 100%. If this Denver team had Aaron Rodgers on their roster, they'd be one of the top 3 teams in the NFL, not just in the AFC. No question, because without Aaron Rodgers, this is an incredibly stacked roster. On offense, they have a really underrated group of skill players. Courtland Sutton's coming back. Jerry Jeudy, I expect to take a leap forward his sophomore season. Y'all know how much I love Noah Fant. And then on defense, we know this is a unit coached by Vic Fangio, who's a defensive genius. They have so much talent at every level, from Vaughn, who you just heard from, coming back opposite Bradley Chubb, to the linebackers, to a secondary that to me looks like one of the better groups in the league. This is such a good defense. And Laura, the thing that occurs to me, hearing him talk about the front office, well, aside from Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock somewhere seeing that quote and feeling a little bit let down, is I think back to the draft, and I start to wonder, if I'm a Broncos fan and this team doesn't get Aaron Rodgers, what are we doing? like not drafting a quarterback because you got everything else on this team. And while I love Patrick Surtain, there were quarterbacks on the board. I would be disappointed to waste such a good roster on a lost season in the middle of the pack.
You know, Mina, I think you actually, the last part you actually touched on is really important. The fact that with this stacked roster that the Denver Broncos have, it seems like they almost pushed almost all their chips in on maybe this deal with Aaron Rodgers, where you had an opportunity to go out there and get a Justin Fields if you're the Denver Broncos. Insert Justin Fields into this lineup for the Denver Broncos. We might be talking about the Denver Broncos in a different light without even discussing Aaron Rodgers. So I think they dropped the ball as far as getting a rookie quarterback in there.
You know, you think back to draft night, it was right after Adam Schefter's first report on this situation, and the idea of Aaron Rodgers being traded to the Broncos felt a lot more realistic then than it does now that the Packers have seemed to make it clear that they don't want to trade him. So I guess it's possible they were thinking along those lines. I'd like to believe that it was more that they just didn't feel like Justin Fields or Mac Jones was the guy for them. Because if you're sitting there on draft night thinking, oh, this is no problem, we're going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, everything will be great, that's a really big if to hang your entire draft on.
You know, it's so interesting because you got to think, too, there could have been some trepidation with recent quarterbacks that the Broncos have drafted. Maybe that's in the back of their minds. We don't just jump for a guy right now. But either way, you end up going defense with a great defender, as Mina pointed out, in Patrick Surtain, and pass up a couple guys who, if they have success at this next level, there are going to be a lot of questions. We're just getting started on NFL Live today. NFL execs and players rank their top 10 quarterbacks projected in 2021. Does Matthew Stafford deserve to be ranked as high and over some D-League executives, coaches, scouts, and players to help us stack up the top 10 players at 11 different positions? Let's look at the quarterback. These are how guys around the league are ranking these quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes tops the list, followed by Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. That's a no-brainer, right? Russell Wilson, Josh Allen rounding out the top 5. Then it gets interesting. You see down there, new Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford checks in at number 6. Dak Prescott at 7th on this list. So, listen, it's July 12th or whatever day it is. I'm not sure. I think it's July 12th. So these are the things that we're doing, right? But Mina, let's try to be serious about it. Is Dak too low on this list in your mind?
I would flip him and Matthew Stafford, which, it's pretty close, 6 and 7. But when you look at the 5 years since Dak's come into the NFL, he ranks 5th in QBR. Stafford's 14th. And if you don't like QBR, you can grab any stat: passer rating, yards per attempt, interception percentage, completion percentage, whatever. Dak is ahead of Stafford. Now, you could say, well, Dak was in a better situation than Matt Stafford. Matt had inconsistent play calling, good skill players, inconsistent protection in Detroit. And you would be right. And I think the fact that he's going to Los Angeles, which is such a quarterback-friendly offense, is a huge part of why he jumped in the rankings, deservedly so. But Dak Prescott remains in one of, if not the best situations for a quarterback in the NFL. Like, it's not like they're switching situations. Dak still has credible group of wide receivers, very good offensive line. So for me, I'm going to go with the younger guy who's been better lately, but I expect them both to have very good seasons.
Yeah, I would certainly put Dak ahead of Stafford as well. I think I'm trying to figure out why it didn't break down that way when you're polling executives and other people league-wide. One thing that jumped to mind, you hear this a lot, people really do cling to their pre-draft evaluations for a very long time. And Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. There were a lot of people that thought he wasn't going to be a starting NFL quarterback, and I'm sure some of them still feel like, oh, he's overrated, maybe the situation has propped him up, etc. But I think the exercise was to project it forward, and I think there is a belief that out of Detroit and into L.A. with Sean McVay and the Rams, Matthew Stafford will play better than he ever has. We're all going to find that out together, but that certainly does seem to be the hope and the expectation for a lot of people around the league when it comes to Stafford.
Yeah, the reality is, either way, you've got Dak Prescott last season leading the league in passing before he ended up getting injured. All right, you see him right there with the numbers, by the way. That breaks it all down. Damian, give me someone who will be on this top 5 list next year. And if you were paying real close attention to your TV, you might have heard him give you a little hint there. Go ahead, D-Wood.
Yeah, listen, I'm going with Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert is going to be a superstar in this league. And I just point back to last year. You're talking about a QB that had no offseason. And just look at the circumstance as to which he started for the Los Angeles Chargers. Tyrod Taylor gets a botched injection. He gets inserted into the lineup right before game time. And all he did was ball the whole season. Got through for over 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. And this Los Angeles Chargers team, they improved upon the area which I thought was a detriment to Justin Herbert, the offensive line. So I think in year 2, with Brandon Staley as the head coach, I think Justin Herbert is just going to vault and just become a superstar in this league.
Yeah, Damien, you hit on it with the offensive line. And I would also point out, hopefully, for Los Angeles, they have better health on the other side of the ball with Derwin James hypothetically playing an entire season, which would keep Herbert from having to put the entire offense on his back. I just want to make one other point with this list. I would have Ryan Tannehill in the top 10 over Kyler Murray. I think he's been a little underrated and ignored despite how efficient he's been playing over the last couple of years in Tennessee. So that would be the other name I would look to. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty good list, but Tannehill belongs there too.
That's interesting, especially adding another weapon like Julio Jones. But you wonder, too, what people would say about leaving Kyler Murray out of that top 10, back to the point of the pre-draft evaluations. All right, much more ahead on NFL Live. Tim Kirkjian joining us from the Home Run Derby, and he brought along some video of Aaron Judge playing high school football. You do not want to miss that. And also, why Timmy says baseball player
to be on the show.
No. Well, I mean, the reality is, we are about the same size. So I'm on the show, which means you can be on the show. We'll leave that there and get to the task at hand here. You mentioned these baseball backgrounds. Let's talk about them. How do they translate in your mind to the NFL?
Well, to me, and I'm hopelessly biased on this, I think baseball players are the most well-rounded of all the professional athletes. That doesn't make them the best athlete. It means if you put a ball of any kind into the hands of a baseball player, they're going to look like they've played that sport before because of the skill required to play baseball. It is a skill sport more than it is an athletic sport. And that's why when you see football players try to throw a baseball or hit a baseball, basketball players try to do the same, a lot of times it doesn't look very good. But you put a football in a baseball player's hands, you put a basketball in his hands, he's going to look like he's done that before in most cases.
Hey, Timmy, listen, man, I watch some of these guys out there in baseball, and they look like they have dad bods like I do. I've been out of the game for a decade, and I'm just not impressed with some of these guys' physiques out there. And you're saying they're the best athletes? Come on.
Damien, you weigh 3 times what I weigh, and I'm still going to tell you that I think you're wrong because the skill required to play baseball is ridiculous. You don't have to look great. You have to have great hands and great eyes. And I did the celebrity softball game last night, and there were some football players that look like they have never played baseball ever. And the reason is they never have. That's the point.
Hey, it's a difficult sport. We're not going to specifically call out any of those guys, but if you want to go look back at the roster, you can find out exactly who Timmy's talking about. Let's talk about tonight on ESPN, the Home Run Derby happening at 8 Eastern. And give us 3 guys in the NFL that you think could compete tonight in the Derby. If you had to pick some of them, who are the 3 that you're going with, Tim?
I would start with J.J. Watt. He's gigantic, even compared to me. And I've seen him swing a baseball bat, and he looks like he's done this before. And he's hit some balls out of the ballpark. It's very impressive how not only how strong he is, but how athletic he is. So I would put him in the football Home Run Derby. Number 2, I would take Patrick Mahomes, of course, who is such a great athlete. I've seen him shoot a basketball. I've seen him throw a baseball. His dad played in the big leagues. I've seen him swing a bat. I've seen him swing a golf club. I think I would put him in the Home Run Derby for the football players, and I think he would do really well. My third guy is Myles Garrett, who I saw jump off a box once, one of those box jumps. He is a freakish athlete. As you can see, he can dunk easily, no surprise there. So I'll take a really big, strong, fast guy who can move, and I'll put him in the home run derby. But my warning is, DK Metcalf is as big and as strong and as fast as the guys I've ever seen, and he couldn't make contact last night at the celebrity softball game.
Yeah, and there it was, putting him on blast. I love it. Here's the thing. When you just listed out those guys, it's making me wish we could have a home run derby for football players. But let's go on the flip side. Give me a guy, Timmy, who's in Major League Baseball that you think could play football also.
Well, I will take Aaron Judge first because he's the biggest guy, position player, ever to play in the big leagues. He's 6'7", he's 282 pounds, he runs like a deer, he's very agile, he's a great athlete. He played basketball in high school and he played football in high school, so he knows. He could have chosen any of those three sports and he took baseball, but he could play, I'm guessing, tight end in the NFL, but he would need a lot of time to learn how to play that position in the NFL. I'm not here to tell you these guys are such great athletes. They could just walk in and start for the Patriots. I'm saying this guy has physical skills that might someday allow him to play in the NFL.
I'm with that. I can see it. Tim, I got to ask you, I think is the most exciting player in baseball right now. I'm talking, of course, about Shohei Ohtani hitting tonight, and then the starting pitcher for the American League, obviously doing things in the sport that have never been done. From a football perspective, just for our viewers, what would be the equivalent of what Shohei Ohtani is doing in the NFL?
Well, you would have to play middle linebacker and quarterback at the same time to do what Shohei Ohtani's doing. And I'm just not sure that Damian Woody is going to rush for 1,000 yards and tackle people on the other side of the ball. Sorry, this guy is a gazelle. He's one of the fastest players in the league. He could play wide receiver in the NFL with a whole lot of teaching and a whole lot of tutelage. But great hands, great speed, great agility, and he's 6'5".
Hey, you know who can also do both? It's Tim Kirkchin, because here you are getting ready for the home run derby, and you're joining us on NFL Live, breaking down football as well as baseball. Timmy, we thank you so much, and we'll, of course, be tuned in tonight to see you guys on ESPN for the home run derby, airing right there on ESPN. Thanks to Tim Kirkchin. You know, the thing is, we've got some baseball backgrounds on this show, right? So certainly when you think about that, you've got to talk about this guy, Dan Graziano. That was actually at Shea Stadium. Dan, was that the last game there? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see the picture again.
They were a week apart. There's the last game at Shea Stadium, last game at Old Yankee Stadium, and our photographer from the Star Ledger, I was working at the time, Bill Pearlman, wanted to take those selfies, and he throws them up on Facebook every now and then, so I have a couple copies of those.
Dan, I will say, your hair looks slightly different, but otherwise you look exactly the same. Let's get to some top plays when it comes to NFL guys who have played a little bit of baseball, right? And continue our theme here on NFL Live. Number 5, we got Aaron Rodgers. He's playing softball. How about this Babe Ruth action right here? D. Wood, he's calling his shot, and he was right. Ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. He was like Nostradamus right there. He called his own shot. Look at the swing. Look at the follow-through, Laura. I mean, like, that's an athlete right there. You don't find many quarterbacks that can do that.
Yeah, and what about this from OBJ? I mean, Mina, it was like ridiculous. And then it was Happy Gilmore, basically. But then he winds up and gives us a bat flip to be compared to all bat flips, right?
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 bat flip. Tim's got to watch that and think about his take on football players versus baseball players.
Mina, just keep talking, because look at Vince Wilfork.
I mean, the majestic is the word that comes to mind. Gorgeous, impressive, supreme. I can't get enough of this. Those are overalls that fringe at the bottom. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Number 2, the best of Bo Jackson. I mean, my goodness, it just doesn't get much better than that. Graz, what is he even doing out there? Nobody else can do that.
It's unbelievable. And when I used to cover baseball, people told stories about Bo Jackson. He was a legend. Like, he did things better than anyone ever could. And he did them in football, too.
Number one, Deion Sanders as a member of the Yankees. Inside the park home run. That was actually Bo Jackson not being able to catch the ball. The helmet flying off. And look, he's safe. Oh, wait, maybe. He's got to get back to the bag. Oh, there we go. All right, now he's safe. Another big-time action from Deion right there. This was a lot of fun, you guys. I think we should do a little more baseball on NFL Live whenever we get the chance, right? Anybody else agree with me?
Yep,
absolutely. I want Tim back.
Yeah, Tim, you have an open invitation at all times. Still to come on NFL Live, Jalen Ramsey has gone head-to-head with some of the best wide receivers in the league, but find out who his 3 toughest opponents are and who Mina thinks was left off that list.
He's the best. Physical guy, his long hands, crazy strong. He competes. Easily top 5.
He always gonna, be at the top of my list usually. To be honest, personally, off of people I done play, I got Odell. When Odell healthy and he on his, he tough. He tough for real. He just fast, twitchy, run good routes, got great hands. I like his game. And then it's tough. I probably got Julio. Julio can do it all. I mean,
He's fast, he's big.
Fast, big, run good routes, catch, run after the catch. He do it all. When Julio healthy, he a dog. He a dog for sure.
So Jalen Ramsey, just to recap, says DeAndre Hopkins, OBJ, and Julio, the 3 most difficult receivers for him to cover. Mina, we'll get to the snubs in a little bit, but are you surprised that Beckham is still on that list? Even though he qualified, it's when he's healthy.
Yeah, Laura, I'm not surprised, but I can see how it would come out of the blue for some people because at this point, I actually think Odell isn't thought of as being in that elite group. He's kind of being slept on at the moment after having all of those injuries. And the reason why Jalen included him is because when Odell was healthy, he was consistently a nightmare for cornerbacks. And it wasn't just one season. I mean, we're talking about a guy who set the NFL record for the most catches ever through a player's first 50 games. He was good in a way that I think suggests he can return to form regardless of coming back from an injury. His route running, which Jalen alluded to, his awareness of leverage, body positioning, and then, of course, the hands. He was the total package. And it's just not size. He's not even a bigger dude or just speed. He was a true number 1 wide receiver, and I think he does belong in that conversation. I look forward to him sort of reasserting his place there.
Just listening to Jalen Ramsey, the reason that it makes sense, he used the word twitchy. And I think that's important when you're talking about a taller cornerback. Odell Beckham Jr. is a very twitchy guy, and twitchy wide receivers usually give taller cornerbacks problems. So when Odell Beckham Jr. is right, there's not many guys that can do the things that Odell Beckham Jr. is capable of doing. And I know me personally, I'm looking forward to Odell going out there this year and kind of, reestablishing himself as one of the elite wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I covered him when he was a rookie with the Giants. I mean, the stuff we just saw him do in practice was so ridiculous. Like, he would go to practice, excited to watch whatever he was going to do that day. And I remember Darren Woodson, when he used to work for us, he told me once he was at the Pro Bowl and Odell was playing, and he said that the old saying when you're a defensive back is watch the hips because the eyes lie, the hips don't lie. He said he had guys coming back to the sideline that were trying to cover Odell saying, the hips lie. Like, his hips actually do lie. The way he moves, they couldn't keep up with it. So, yeah, I think it would be pretty cool for the game if he got back to close to what he was.
I just want to make note that we started the show with David Bakhtiari chugging beer, and now we've gotten a Shakira reference in the show. So that means we're really off to a great start here today. One thing I wonder, Mina, is if OBJ will maintain that twitchiness despite dealing with the injuries. You would think that he would. All reports coming out of Browns camp are that he is even better than before. But there's somebody, or maybe a couple of guys, that were left off of Jalen Ramsey's list of toughest to cover. Anybody stick out to you from the wide receiver standpoint?
Oh, well, the guy who comes to mind is the guy who scored on Jalen Ramsey, or at least that Rams defense in the playoffs, and that's Devontae Adams, who I believe is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. In the same way that I believe Jalen Ramsey is the best cornerback in the NFL. And the word, if twitchiness is the word we're going to use to explain Odell Beckham Jr.'s excellence. The word for Devontae Adams is release. I mean, you're seeing it, well, not so much there, but he has this little bunny hop thing he does at the line that is just devastating for DBs. It's impossible to sort of anticipate where he's going to go, and it's a big part of the reason why he was so special last season with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Graz, I feel like Devontae Adams doesn't get enough respect. And maybe that's just my own opinion, but you talk to all these guys in the league. Are corners talking about Devontae Adams that way?
Yeah, again, unscientific. But when I talk to cornerbacks and ask them that question, who's the toughest guy you cover, I get the answer Devontae Adams a lot. He is a popular answer among cornerbacks currently playing in the NFL, and they use that word release. They say his releases are so tough. I think I asked a couple of his coaches about it once. They said it comes from guys that have basketball backgrounds are a little bit like that sometimes. But the corners do not enjoy that because it's he can beat you right away, almost right before the play starts. And I think that's something they find difficult to deal with.
Yeah, that may not be exactly scientific, but this is. Devontae Adams has 58 touchdown catches in the last 5 seasons. That's 11 more than the next closest player, which is Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about the Seahawks. They have to deal with Jalen Ramsey twice a year, and recently Bobby Wagner talked about the Russell Wilson drama earlier this offseason. He said, I think, honestly, it's part of how the league works. If you lose and don't go to the big game, they always try to figure out what went wrong, what happened. Bobby Wagner went on to say, I definitely feel like it was a little overblown, but it's all water under the bridge now. So the reality is, D. Wood, and you've been in these locker rooms, they're all going to have to get back in the locker room together, and they're all going to have to look at each other in the eye as men. You think the drama is actually over in Seattle?
No, I just think it's on pause right now, and I think for a couple reasons. One, you got to look within the division. You're talking about the NFC West. That's the toughest division in football. We're talking about the Los Angeles Rams, who are, with Matthew Stafford on board, is probably a Super Bowl contender. The San Francisco 49ers getting all those injured guys back. They're going to be another team that's going to be a Super Bowl contender, and Arizona Cardinals have gotten better as well. So I think that's one aspect. But another aspect is they got a new play caller, Shane Waldron. First-time play caller. Russ wants to cook, okay? Russ wants to cook. We don't know how he's going to call games. I got questions about the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. If Russ is not able to cook this year, guess what? We're going to be revisiting this conversation again next offseason.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a great point about Shane Waldron because, despite being tied to Sean McVay, as is, of course, the blessing that seems to follow coaches throughout the NFL, he didn't call plays in Los Angeles. And we can assume that the offense is going to have some resemblance to the McVay Shanahan offense, and which is not what Seattle has historically done. A little bit more play action, perhaps integration of the run and pass game, but we won't know until we see it. I do know that Russell Wilson has articulated in the past that he would like his offense to have some more similarity to those offenses that he saw within the same division. And I imagine that Waldron coming on was a decision made in part to satisfy that desire on part of the quarterback, who is going to be in Seattle at least for one more season.
Right, at least one more, Mina. I agree with Damian Woody's take that this comes up again next offseason, but my understanding is that Russell Wilson's happy with the extent to which the front office involved him in some decisions, including Shane Waldron, and kept him abreast of what they were doing this offseason. So I think for now it's legitimately put to bed, even if it's only napping.
Well, it probably is taking a small nap, and the reality is these players are going to continue to want to take control of their futures, and I think that storyline isn't going anywhere. Let's get to some more news. Falcons linebacker Barkevious Mingo was released from the team on Saturday following an arrest on Thursday for a second-degree felony charge of indecency with a child, sexual conduct. Mingo was released on $25,000 bond Friday. An arrest warrant obtained by ESPN details the accusation by a then 13-year-old boy who says Mingo pulled at his underwear and touched him inappropriately in July 2019. The boy says he and a friend were staying at a hotel with Mingo after a trip to an amusement park. Mingo's attorney, Chris Lewis, says the Falcons rushed to judgment in terminating the linebacker's contract before gathering all the facts of his case, and said in a statement given to Adam Schefter that the accusation against Mr. Mingo is a lie. Barkevious knows it, and so does his accuser. More coming your way on NFL Live next. And after being on the losing end of Super Bowl 55, find out which Chiefs star